Pastor James, do you believe that God still speaks to people?
Well, he certainly hasn't given me a call lately. No, joking aside, it's a serious question. And I think a lot of us wish God would speak more directly to us, give us easy to follow words. I guess, Pastor Chris, I'm a little bit ambivalent on it. I think God still does very occasionally speak to people, but I don't think it's something we should necessarily expect or look for in our daily lives.
What a great example from our reading for the first reading from the semi-continuous uncomplimentary series, then, where seems to be just wandering about with his flock, and a bush burns but is not consumed. Let me turn aside and see this great sight. God does not speak to everyone. God speaks to Moses out of a bush that burns and is not consumed. And he's 80 years old when this happened.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
this is and it's not just, well, you'll talk about that because that's your thing. I don't want to steal your thunder. Sorry, the pregame is getting ahead of me. I'm getting
yes,
ahead of, but it's super important to realize that yes, God chooses Moses. Yes, God speaks to Moses, and that it's not to everybody, and that it's not immediate.
yeah. And I want to say, when God speaks to Moses, I think an important thing to keep in mind is this is part of God's mission that God is speaking to Moses. So, earlier in the book of Exodus, their cry went up to the Lord, and God remembered God's promises. Um, so the message is to Moses, but it's almost not for Moses, if you will. It's for God's mission to liberate the people, and it's for the greater community. So you think about that when God speaks in this case, it's kind of on that vertical and horizontal axis. We talk about faith towards God and love towards neighbor. You've got God's mission and the good of the people. And I think that's so important because we often wish God would speak to us in our personal lives and first of all, I think that might not be as comforting as we would always hope. Moses is afraid when God speaks
He
to him,
does
and
not want to be
those
spoken
people
to. Pick someone else.
exactly. But second, when God does reveal God's self in some special way, it's often uniquely tied to a mission for everybody. So I guess, Pastor Chris, we might ask then, is God normally just silent? Is God all done speaking, or what do you think?
God is definitely not done speaking. And sorry, real quick, I want to go back to Moses is safe. Moses is tending the flock of his father-in-law Jethro. His people are still in slavery and bondage
Right.
in Egypt, but Moses is safe. So this message is definitely not for Moses.
Yep.
Um, does God still speak to people? I do believe that God still speaks to people. I do believe that God speaks, that every once in a while you will get somebody with a true prophetic message, but not everyone who claims to be a prophet of the Lord is a prophet of the Lord. And it'll be, we are given the qualifications, Deuteronomy 18, for how you determine whether this person is a real prophet. Um, but I think you had something to add about how it is that we still hear God's word today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think we take it for granted so many times, but um, the word in the scriptures is still a living word for all of us, and I think it it tells us maybe not what we always want to hear, but what we really need to hear. Pastor Chris, you had brought up Luther says we could spend our whole lives meditating on the Ten Commandments.
Just the Ten Commandments.
Um, yeah, that's
That would
right.
be enough. Do those things and you would have a life of work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And obviously, how many times do we need to hear the good news that we're forgiven? You know, for me at least, it's hour by hour, if not more than that. Um, so I think that sometimes we can look after the burning bush and after the voice and after the miraculous when what's truly miraculous might be just sitting on our bookshelf.
And that sometimes we need to discern that, yes, sometimes it's me in my room or my closet reading God's word, but sometimes, perhaps even often, we need to discern that, hear that voice, together as a church. The church, and I don't just mean a congregation. Sometimes it is just a congregation, but I mean the church discerns God's word for us together today.
Yeah, I think a real base level reading of Exodus is that the people need Moses for their faith. But even though Moses may have doubted this at times, I think Moses also needs the community. So it's a give and take, and I think in both of our opinions, that's still true for us today. If we really want to hear God and live out what God is saying.
I don't know if it shows up in the lectionary, but at some point his father-in-law has to come back to him and say, dude, you can't do it all alone.
And neither can we.
And neither can we.